right, to another episode of ZB's Horsepower Talk. As always, I'm ZB, Zack Brown. If you're wondering, am I going to wear this hat on every episode this week? You're damn right I'm wearing it. I'm excited, so it's going to be on every episode this week. Debuting today, we've got a brand new segment, really our first segment of this show. Crew Chief Corner with Jeff Brown. Now, obviously, Jeff Brown is my dad, who's had tons of years of experience working on these race cars, sprint cars specifically. He's followed racing his entire life. And we're going to get his input with all the racing action weekly now. Obviously, it's a perfect week to kick it off with the Bristol Dirt Race with NASCAR, Truck Series, and the Cup Series racing this weekend. Crew Chief Corner is brought to you by Lickety Lou's Booyah Sauce. All-purpose sauce, spicy, yellow, and original. Go check them out at licketyloos.com. Order you some. They got some awesome merch. Thank you for coming on Lickety Lou's for this segment. So without further ado, let's welcome in my dad, Jeff Brown, to Crew Chief Corner. All right, Dad, welcome to the show. First segment doing Crew Chief Corner. First week of doing it. Obviously, we're starting it off with a bunch of dirt racing. NASCAR's kicking off at Bristol this weekend with the Truck Series and the Cup Series racing down there. So let's dive into NASCAR. We'll go into the Outlaws, and then we'll talk a little bit of All-Stars, and then we'll kind of go ahead with our picks for this weekend. So with NASCAR going to a dirt track, how do these teams prepare for a dirt race with especially the Cup cars, but even the truck cars the trucks as well?
Well, the one thing with NASCAR is, especially on the Cup side, they're not going to let you do a whole lot, even going to dirt. I think they may let them change up the air intakes a little bit, get in for air into the radiator and the engine. But as far as the car, I don't believe they're allowed to do much of anything. The trucks, I know some of the guys tried running some deflectors up on the hood to kind of keep mud off the windshield. But even the trucks, other than going to the tires, which I believe are even still the same width and wheels as they run for everything else, just obviously a softer compound, have tread. I think it's pretty much they're taking the cars right off the asphalt, throw some dirt tires on the thing, and letting them roll. I do remember a funny thing. I don't remember if it was the first Bristol race or one of the truck races. One of the drivers had like a Swiffer in his car so he could wipe the dirt off the windshield from the inside, which I thought was pretty ingenious, because there's really no way of doing that, because outside
Was that Logano, maybe? Was that Logano at Bristol? I feel like it might have been something like he did or something.
That, I don't know if it was Bristol or even out when the trucks were at Eldora.
No, I think it was. I think it might have been maybe the first Cup race at Bristol.
I
don't know who did it.
It might have been Harvick, but I'm not.
Well, wouldn't one of these things with
pretty smart.
Well, isn't one of these things with these cars? Couldn't they easily just remove the windshield? I mean, that's what they've been saying. Or is there just too much electronics inside of these cars that you can't do that?
I didn't really think about the electronic part of it. I don't know why you couldn't do that. NASCAR, they were adamant about not removing the windshields, because you look at any other kind of dirt car, late model sprint cars, modifieds, they do not have windshields. Most of them are on a rock screen, but with the windshield, you get that thing caked up. There's nothing you can do until you pull a tear off on it, and the driver can't do that himself.
Well, what's with Bristol being an asphalt track, and they're not digging it up and having it just made as a whole dirt track. They're literally just putting dirt onto it. So what's the main difference between actually having a dirt track from scratch? It's literally only dirt, as to just piling dirt onto asphalt.
Well, the main thing I think would be the dirt, or it's probably clay. It doesn't have a chance to really get seasoned. They put it down. What do you have, a couple months for it to kind of really get meshed in. But interesting though, they actually put a sawdust compound down on the track first, then they put the dirt on top of it. That way, it's easier for them to remove the dirt.
Yeah, makes sense because they've got to go back and go race the asphalt race in a couple months. Um, so the two different series racing there this weekend, the trucks and the Cup series. What's the main difference between those two racing on dirt? You kind of touched on it a little bit ago, but what have you seen? You've seen them both race on dirt now.
The biggest difference, the Cup cars are a fully independent suspended car, so each wheel is completely independent of the others. Where the trucks have a solid rear axle, which is probably a lot closer to like a dirt late model or a modified. I would think it would be way easier to get a Cup car to handle with a four-wheel independent suspension on dirt, which may or may not be why you don't really see them slide. It seems like the trucks are definitely more sideways in the corners. Independent suspended car might just want to pretty much drive around there a little bit. But dirt, you want to see those guys pitching them in sideways.
Well, they started the first time they raced on Bristol. They raced it during the day, and they changed it to a night race. Is it better to race a dirt race at nighttime, especially with these cars and trucks, as compared to the daytime?
Well, this is probably going to be opposite what you think I'm going to say. With the way these cars are, I'm going to say the daytime is actually probably a little bit better. At nighttime, if you get the track right and the track tacky, yeah, it's going to be fast. The problem with that is that mud is going to stick to everything. It's going to pile up in the radiator inlets. It's going to get on the windshield. And when we talked about having the windshield, they didn't have it. The drivers are wearing. They put the tear offs on their helmet. On a muddy track, I've seen drivers put over 20 tear offs on the thing. That way they can just tear them off as they go, and they're good to go. You plow your windshield full of mud, you either got to not see pit or do something. That's so the daytime will help with that quite a bit. It won't cake up the whole thing. The problem is, it gets way slicker, and it's so hard for these cars. They're so heavy, have so much power, and such small tires. It's just so hard for them to get a bite. That's the dirt thing's neat. I think it needs to be a bigger dirt track than Bristol. Like it needs to be like a mile dirt where they can actually have some straightaway to get some speed and actually have a little bit of downforce. But it's all about the show.
Well, I mean, they want to do something unique, especially with Bristol. There's a big dirt racer racing at Bristol this weekend. Jonathan Davenport. He's one of the best dirt racers, especially on late models that's ever been. He's racing in. It was just announced today that he's racing the truck race, and he's also been announced that he's racing in the Cup Series. He's racing for Spire Motorsports in the trucks, and for Colleague in the Cup. Do you expect him to have success with both of these series, either of these series, and do you think he'll be easily able to transition to racing these cars?
Well, I think it's smart that he's going to run the truck first. Now, I don't know if he's ever driven any of these type of cars, so to know what to expect. I remember another really good late model driver, Scott Bloomquist, was attempting to run at Eldora, and he had the guys. He wanted to unhook the sway bar so the truck would roll over onto the right rear like a late model does to try to hook up, and that absolutely did not work at all. He couldn't get out of his own way. So hopefully, Davenport can, if he can get the feel he wants, I think he can do very well. I think it's going to be tougher. I think it's going to be tougher on the Cup side. Just those drivers are just so good. But with Colleague, I mean, that's a good team. So it's not like he's getting a backmarking team. That team is probably capable of winning. Because if he can get the feel he wants or adapt to what he needs to do, which he's a great racer. He's probably right up there talent wise with Larson. So I'd like to see him. I want to for Cup. I want to see him at least make the show and get a solid top 20. I think everybody consider that a success. Jumping right at that, but the trucks, shoot, I wouldn't say top 10, top 5 would be out of the question if he can get the feel he's looking for.
Well, I get the feeling he's also got to avoid wrecks because everybody's going to spin out lap one on the trucks and probably the cups too until they start getting used to it. It's just happened every single year. People start piling up. Larson's gotten caught up in I think both wrecks in both races, and I think Christopher Bell, he's also a favorite. He gets caught up in wrecks too. It just depends if you can avoid getting into a wreck or not. Um, Before we'll get to our picks at the end of this. We'll combine the picks with the Outlaw Show and the All Star Show with the NASCAR. Let's go over to the Outlaws. It's tracks not a lot of people really know about that they're racing this week, and they're racing at US 36 Raceway and 81 Speedway. I don't think you've ever been to either one of these. It's Midwest stuff, so not a whole lot of people have a lot of knowledge of these tracks. So how would you prepare for a track that you've never been to or you have at least haven't raced in a while, because the Outlaws haven't been to either one of these in a while?
Well, now it's easier with the technology. Just like I was looking up the tracks that I've never been there before. Put it in Google, it was going to pop up on YouTube. Even if it's not your class you're running, you already get it. You know what kind of track you're going to get. You know the size of it. You can kind of compare it to tracks that you've been to, you have notes on, and then at least you probably have an idea of, a base setup. You probably have a general idea of the gear you're going to run. You can kind of see the characteristics of the track as it changes throughout the night. Is it going to be heavy? Is it going to get a cushion? Is it going to get slick? So a lot of that does help. Back in the 80s when you're traveling, you go into a new track, you have to talk to somebody who's been there, and then you're just kind of like, okay, let's hope.
Just kind of wing it.
Is this track going to be, if you go to a track and you're expecting a 3/8 little bull ring with no straightaways, you show up and you pull in the Williams Grove Speedway, you're like, well, that's not correct.
Yep. The Outlaws have changed to a completely different tire setup this year. Is there been anything you've seen so far with these tires, good or bad? The racing's been pretty good this year, and the cars you expect to really run up front have still run up front. So has there really been a dramatic change that you've seen just from the racing standpoint?
I was looking at some comparisons of the tires between this year and last year. There's not a whole lot different. The biggest difference is these new Hoosier tires have the same tread pattern the whole way across the tire, which is pretty nice. And they have, as far as my understanding is, they don't have any taper built into them, where last year's tire sort of had a small taper like a cone. So these are flat across, and that gives you the opportunity. You run one, you can flip it over and have a fresh edge. Not that any of the top teams are probably going to run a tire twice, but it could really save a smaller team. You buy one tire, maybe you can get 2 races out of it. And I don't think and like you said, racing's been good. I don't think the tire has really made anybody struggle. I think it's still a very similar compound, very similar tire. I think just the tread pattern's a little different, and how it's built is a little different. I'm sure it changed setups a little bit, but it still seems like it's a pretty good tire, and I think it can save money. Even a small team goes to a big team, buys used right rear for $50. Turn that thing around backwards, you get a night out of it. Instead of spending $200 or whatever they are now for a new right rear, you can do it pretty cheap and probably have a decent tire.
Well, what do you think will be the key for these teams to have success at these 2 racetracks this weekend, and kind of going on that they're racing 2 different tracks and 2 different nights, so that's can't be the easiest thing to do either.
Well, it's pretty neat. I was looking. They're both listed as 3/8 mile tracks. US 36. Yeah, US 36, high banked. Straightaways aren't real long. It looks like it's a real dark brown clay.
It looks like Knoxville.
Not quite that dark, but and I was watching it. It looks like it has 2 grooves racing. It doesn't build like a big cushion. and then you go to 81 Speedway, and the best comparison I had for that one, it's a bigger track. You know, they're both listed as 3/8 of a mile. It's quite a bit, the straightaways are a lot longer. It's not near as banked, but it's still a fast track. They turn 13 seconds around that track, I think, give or take a little bit, depending on the conditions. US 36 has no guardrail in the backstretch, which I always thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
You can get kind of pushed up on there. The Outlaws, I don't think were there last year. I think they were there in 2022. The race I saw, I mean, there was some great side-by-side racing. It was, you can run top, you can run bottom. 81 Speedway, from what I saw, looked like it was a little more dusty. It seemed like most of the cars wanted to run around the top, but you know, and weather can change all that. But yeah, for two tracks listed as the same thing, they couldn't be completely different tracks.
Well, you were saying that they haven't been there for a couple years for both of the tracks. Do the Outlaws seem to usually find a different track to race at every year? Like, you got your traditional ones they race at, but some of these tracks that nobody really knows about, have they always seemed to go to different tracks throughout the country and just try it out?
This year was probably their biggest change that they had in their schedule. For many years, they pretty much had a couple races in Florida, then they would go to California. This year they were changing up. They didn't go to California. You know, they were trying to race in Pennsylvania, which Pennsylvania March. I mean, I've been there where it's been nice. Unfortunately, this time hasn't been nice.
Yeah.
You usually get a couple tracks throughout the year, and it's tough for these smaller venues to bring the Outlaws in. I don't know what it costs, but I'm sure it's plenty. And if you can't hold the fans to get there, it's tough for those tracks to afford the Outlaws, which is probably why a lot of times, you know, they might have them 1 year and not come back for a couple of years, just money wise. But I'm sure the fans, especially in, you know, we're talking Missouri and Kansas, you know, they're race fans out there. They're going to pack those places.
Nothing else to do in those two states. No offense, but all right, we'll finish up with the All Stars heading to Attica. Have you been to this track before?
I've been to Attica several times.
What is this track like?
I'm going to be nice. It's a complete dust ball.
Okay.
I've been standing. It's a relatively flat. I guess it's about a 3/8 mile, and I've been standing in the infield. The pits are all outside, so we run the infield race. You know, watching them race, and not far from the track, you could not see the cars go past you. It was, you know, lighting may have changed a little bit late, but it was dusty and dark. It didn't have much lighting. I think they improved the lighting a little bit, but the dust is still there. It's just the Ohio dirt. I think it's just like farm dirt. It don't hold moisture
for racing.
Yeah, well, the track's like I don't know if it's inside of a horse track or something like that, but it's like it's almost looks like it's out in the middle. You know, you've been to trailways. It's in the middle of pasture, and it's about what it looks like.
Well, where else are you going to put these dirt tracks? I mean,
well, you know, they usually put on a pretty good show. You know, the All-Star guys can really get around a slick, dusty track. You know, a lot of tracks out there are that way, and they get good at running them. So you know, it'd be nothing for that to be a great show if you can see it.
Do the Ohio posse do they run at Attica? Do you know anything about that? Or you're not sure? Or I don't really know how. They're not as big as the PA posse, but
yeah, I don't know if they have a whole bunch of tracks that run weekly shows for the sprint cars. I mean, there are a lot of Ohio drivers that aren't like going the All-Star circuit. So I'm sure there's got to be something somewhere. And it's a lot like Pennsylvania. There's a lot of tracks not too far from each other. You know, you got Attica, you got KC Raceway,
Atomic.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't think I knew that one. Did you? Yeah, I knew that one.
Yeah, good job.
Well, the All Stars were racing back to back at the same track. We talked about what the difference racing two different tracks in 2 different days. But how do you handle rate? And you've got plenty of experience crew chiefing cars that race back to back at the same track. How do you handle it? Obviously, you could have success one day, and then the next day you could be last, or vice versa. So, how do you approach those races?
Well, a lot of times if you're going to run it 2 days in a row, almost plan on the second day of the track being slicker, slower, drier most of the time. It could be a twofold thing. Like you could, if you run good the first night, you figure like, all right, I know where I'm going to start. The track's going to be slicker. We'll tighten up a little bit. More than likely, you got a good baseline. But if you're jumping the first night, you might as well take your setup, throw it out, put something else in. If you come back with the same setup, you're going to be jumping again the second night. At least it gives you a quick chance for redemption to where you're not having to wait another week, another month, a year to come back to the same track to try to be like, you know what, we really sucked this last time. And if I had one more shot at it,
Yeah.
that's all I need. So it makes it a little bit nicer. And honestly, if it's a traveling show, it's kind of nice for the crews to maybe stay in one hotel room for, more than one time.
Yeah.
Just stay off the road for a little bit, just to have a little sense of normalcy.
And you can sit down, kind of figure out what you need to do differently the second night to have success too, I'm sure.
Right.
Um, Before our picks, I wanted to go over the high limit racing with the Kyle Larson's series and everything. They released the 25 drivers that are racing full time in it. Who and that kind of stood out to you and was like, I didn't really expect him to race full time in it this for this season.
Probably Danny Dietrich. Not that it's a surprise. I didn't expect him to do the whole tour. As far as the Pennsylvania guys, Macri, that doesn't surprise me. He was going to run that.
Yeah.
Brent Marks, he's almost a true outlaw. He's going to run wherever the money is.
Yeah.
There's some of the other guys. I'm not surprised Rico's going to run the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, Larson's going to be in it. I think it's going to be. I commend Larson for trying to do something a little bit different. They're trying to get the money to the racers. They're not requiring them to have all these strict rules that the outlaws. They don't want the outlaws running against anybody else or doing anything like that.
Well, speaking of rules, there's strict rules. They actually have rule changes for the races. Specifically, their I think it's the dice rule or something like that. They're calling it, where if you start on the front row, you have the choice to roll dice and add whatever that rolls to. That goes to add it to the position where you were going to start. So if you're starting on the pole, you roll a 6. You're going to start 7th. If you choose to do that, you get rewarded for every car you pass $1,000 extra. Lance, I talked to Lance about it, and he's like, not too many people are going to want to give up a pole position for that. You might have a couple like Larson. He was telling me. So, do you think that's a good idea, or is it something that might be kind of a little bit of a wasted rule?
I don't disagree with the idea. I kind of agree with Lance. I don't think some of the guys are going to do it. But then you get the guys like Danny Dietrich be like, what the hell? Let's put on a show. I can remember in the 80s, Weichert had drivers like that. I can remember, I think it was when Jack Hodge was running Weichert's car. It was at Williams Grove. They just decided they were going to start at the tail end of the field and they wanted to pass every car. They didn't. But, that was, and some of those drivers are still the old, still that type of like, hell yeah, I can go past everybody. Why not?
Well, you're going to see Larson do that, and I bet you end up seeing Bowman do the same thing. They're not in it for the money; they're fine at Hendrick, so why not try to put on a show for the fans? So I can almost guarantee at least those two are going to do that.
Bowman's another one that surprised me a little bit. He was going to run the whole series. That's good for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely well. That's the Larson effect. He comes to that team and shows that influence to go race other things except instead of just NASCAR. So I mean, and I think it's improved Bowman as a racer.
Oh, I
Um,
think so. I think so too. And anytime you can race and learn a different skill, something's got to transfer, into the NASCAR where you're running something and all of a sudden your car's a little loose and it's like,
mhm.
wow, it's actually pretty fast. And I'm not having any problem with it. And that's probably because of the sprint car.
Yeah. The other rule that I really agree with, and I'm really glad that Larson's trying this out for the series, is the choose cone rule. I think NASCAR implementing it into their series after the success at the Legends tracks and the street stocks that they've started it off with. I think it's helped the racing out a ton and gets people to choose which lane they want to be in if they want to risk it and go to the not preferred lane and to jump a couple extra spots. So I think that's a good idea to just at least try it out and see how that goes. And I can almost bet that's going to end up being a permanent thing at probably in Outlaws.
I think it's a neat rule. Um, I know the Outlaws, they do the double file restarts. And if you have a caution on the restart, they'll go to single file because they don't want to keep these people crashing every time. That probably needs to be implemented just to keep the show moving. But I don't really like the single file restarts because the car in front of you has such an advantage because you can't pass till you get to the cone on the front stretch. Double file, you get to the line, you're going, you're racing right off the bat. It is.
Well, that's
It's hard once you're up to speed. It's hard to pass that guy after you get halfway down the front stretch before you can pass anybody. That makes it tough.
well, that's different from what Lance said. He he straight up said he hates the double file restarts, but I mean he's done it for the long time now with single files. So getting used to the double file, that's definitely
Well, the
different.
chances of getting into a crash are definitely a lot higher.
Yeah,
For
and
sure.
you've got some people that probably shouldn't be starting up in certain spots, and they end up crashing. But yeah, it happens. Um, well, let's get in our picks, and maybe you'll have better luck with your picks than I do, especially the Cup Series, because
Hey, the
everybody I
guy did
picked
not
just
crash this week, so that's a good job.
well, yeah, well, I think Harvard got fifth, fourth, something like
Yeah,
that.
that's pretty good for your jinx.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you can. We'll start your picks first. I'll do my pick second. Start off NASCAR Truck Series. Who do you think will have some success in the
I'm going
dirt
to pick a
racing?
little bit of a dark horse on the truck series. Got to go with the dirt racer, Stuart Friesen.
Oh, makes sense. Pretty good pick. I thought about it, and I don't really. I think I'm going to go dirt, and I'm going to go the darker horse, Jonathan Davenport for the truck race.
There you go.
Why not? All right, let's go over the Cup Series, and this is the one um, I'll really probably regret. So, who's your pick for the for the Cup race to win at Bristol?
I'm going to stick with dirt. Guy's been fast last few weeks. Christopher Bell.
Fuck, damn. No, I mean I can cuss. I don't care. That's who I was gonna pick. Um, I was going back and forth the figuring out who I wanted to who I could pick for this. I was actually screw it. I'm going with Christopher Bell too. He's had a lot of speed this year. He got caught up with the another Chastain incident at Richmond, but he's been fast. And the jinx for dirt racers racing on dirt in the Cup race, it's got to eventually break. So
Yeah,
now it won't.
they're too good to keep getting into these you know pileups.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to jinx Larson, so that was a reason I'm not going to pick him because I'm not even getting into that. Uh, all right, Outlaws racing at these two racetracks. I mean, there's really about 4 or 5 I think you can really pick at this point that are going to be fast at every racetrack they go to. So who do you think? Let's do I-36 first. Who do you think wins there?
I've gone back and forth on this one a couple times. I don't believe either of these two guys have won yet this year, but I decided to pick Sheldon Haudenschild for US 36. It was torn between him and Logan Schuchart.
Is Logan your pick for 81?
No.
Who's that?
Brad Sweet.
There's a surprise. Again, yeah, and there's a select number of people you can pick, I think. For 36, yeah, I was going back and forth, but I can't really count him out too often. I'm going with Donnie Schatz on that one. He's going to get a win here at some point, and he's going to start breaking off a few wins at a time. I don't think there's going to be a repeat winner for back-to-back races here. 81 Speedway, and I've been saying it the entire year. He's probably going to win the championship, at least in my opinion. I think David Gravel will win at 81.
It's a good pick.
Yeah, there we go. Now they'll probably flip. I'm sorry, guys, if you end up crashing. It's not my jinx. All Stars at Attica. This obviously back-to-back nights. Do you think there's a back-to-back winner, or do you think there's going to be two different winners there?
No, it's going to be back-to-back winner.
Or who
he's going to sweep the nights.
Who do you think?
Sunshine Tyler Courtney.
That's a pretty good pick. You know what? I'll back you up on that. We'll double down on that. That's a good pick. Yeah, Sunshine can definitely get it done there. They've had about a month off, so it'll be interesting how they go into a Dust Bowl just like Attica for the first race back.
Now, I'm kind of curious to see if, say, Brent Marks, does he stay in PA? Does he head to the Midwest, or does he go to Ohio? Same with Anthony Macri.
Yeah.
Those two guys could throw a wrench in those picks as well.
Well, I know the Grove is they're going to attempt their season opener Friday and Port's racing on Saturday. And Lance just announced he's changed his schedule and racing in those races. I'm throwing a wrench in it. I didn't even give you notes on that. At Williams Grove, do you even think they're even going to get a race in this weekend, or is Mother Nature going to get it again?
I don't think they're going to make it this weekend.
It's going to rain again.
Looking at the weather, it looks like it's going to. I think Williams Grove is going to cancel pretty early. I think Port Royal will get their race in.
You want to pick just for giggles to pick the Port winner at least?
Anthony Macri.
If he
doesn't go to Ohio,
I'm
going to pick Macri.
I'd be surprised if he stays around. If he races, I'd go with Logan Wagner if they're racing. I don't know how many races they're racing, but I'd go with Logan Wagner. That's his best track. He's won there. He's been.
The easy pick is probably Lance. They've been struggling a little bit. I think I don't know what all's been happening. I know he's been getting into some crashes.
It's
haven't heard
kind
much
of
from Mac
kind of up in the area, kind of luck of the draw, literally. So with a lot of stuff. All right, well, Dad, thanks for coming on. This is the first segment, first week of Crew Chief Corner. Make sure you tune in every Wednesday. We're going to go asphalt racing next week. So Dad, you're definitely gonna have to take your notes for that and come back a little bit prepared.
I'm just like Larry McReynolds. I got my notebook here.
There you go. Look at that.
I got my calculator.
You can actually understand him too, instead of some of the twang that Larry McReynolds has. So, all right, everybody, Crew Chief Corner with Jeff Brown. Thank you, Dad.
Anybody watching? You got a question? Leave it in the comments below. We'll see if we can get it on the show.
Right.
How's that?
Like and subscribe, everybody. Have a good one.